Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I'm back with more of the Zoom session that I had with our longtime production assistant, John Dayton, covering various different aspects of the making of the Waltons. So, here you go. First of all, what seasons were you with the show? I can't remember.
Judy, I've tried to go back through my history. I was working at NBC, which was just across the street. So I think 72, I did a few shows. Let's see, that was season 1, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Possibly season 3, some of 4, definitely 5, the whole season. And possibly some of 6 and some of 7. But you know what's really interesting? You have to look at a map for this, but I lived at the corner of Riverside and Warner. So I could just literally roll out of bed and be on the Walton set.
Wow.
Directly across the street.
Wow.
Actually, the old Warner Brothers Records building was there, tiny, tiny building. And the garden, the Walton's garden, backed right up to that. There were trees that hid that building. So the next thing over was my apartment. There was a brick fence. You probably remember Warner Brothers, the big brick fence that went all the way. It went all the way around. Warner's would close the gates, the main gates, on the weekends, except for the barroom gate, which was way down the other end. And so to get to my office, which was literally producer 6, which is literally right there, I would have had to walk all the way around, over a mile, to get to the far end of the studio, then walk all the way back. So I got permission from security to jump the wall.
Wow.
I couldn't do it today. It's a big wall. But I would jump up, put my arms up, and hoist myself over. So the episodes I really remember is season 5. And that was Richard's last season. Basically, it was, we didn't know. Wasn't that Will's last season? Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. The Ferris Wheel was, which season was Grandma Comes Home? I think that was season 6.
That was season 6. Well, I was there.
So Will passed away between season 6 and season 7.
Okay. Well, I was there for season 6 too then.
Yeah.
I tried to make sense of this because I remember finding out that Will had passed in a very unusual way. My dad was flying into town for business, and I went to the Burbank airport to pick him up. And in those days, you could walk right outside the door, and they would walk across the asphalt there. And he came up to me and he said, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I heard that Will Geer passed." And I said, "Well, how did you hear that on the plane?" He said, "People were talking about it." Isn't it amazing?
Wow.
They were talking about it on the plane.
Yeah. I don't remember how I heard, which is very, very strange. But I remember how I learned about Ralph Waite passing, which was that somebody sent me a text and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about Ralph." And I'm like, "What?" So I, got on the internet and, so people think that we get notified of everything. It was kind of like finding out how the show was canceled. I kind of heard it through the grapevine.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't like somebody called and said, "Well, and we didn't know as we were shooting season 9. I mean, there was some speculation that we'd kind of run our course and, that it might be time. And some people, in watching the final episode, there's some sense that perhaps the episode was a bit of a wrap up with the Baldwin sisters throwing a party and John Boy having gone to New York and then coming back home and sort of celebrating it all. But we didn't know for sure. So it was really while we were on hiatus. And, it's just an odd thing when those moments happen, because it wasn't like, a lot of shows nowadays, they know, well, we're shooting our last season.
Yeah.
But I don't know I don't know how it would have been, to shoot those last episodes if I'd known that they were the last episodes.
Yeah.
I think it might have been harder. It was so bizarre anyway, just to, to get that news after 9 seasons,
It's so funny because that show I was working at NBC, I was happy to hear it was being canceled. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. The show was just a nightmare. And people still that worked at NBC in those days, oh my God, Judy, it was so long ago. I remember Carson was shooting next door. So I got to know Johnny and the people that hung around over there. But Barbara Walters, this is how long ago this was. Barbara Walters, I came off the stage and it was a Sunday and there was barely anybody in the hall. And I see this little image and she's walking closer and closer. Oh my gosh, that's Barbara Walters. And she was crying. And I said, you need a hug. I don't even think I really knew who she was. And she hugged me and she said, I've just been released. NBC had let her go.
Wow.
Did you know that? She had been fired by NBC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
I know. Had nothing to do with the Waltons. I remember. But remember that episode? Oh, what was it? John's Crossroads, where he took a job in town and it was awful. He had an awful experience. You remember that in The Office? I mean, that episode's coming back to me. That was actually a very nice episode. We had some wonderful actors on that. But it was, Olivia didn't want him to go, but he had to go because he hadn't earned money.
Right.
And there were some not very nice people in the office and it upset him. And finally, he quit. He didn't get fired. I hope I'm right about that. But
I believe so too, but I can't tell you how many times I have, talked about an episode and talked about things. And then afterwards, just from the way I remember it, and then I'll get corrected by all of the viewers.
Everybody else.
They know the show better than me. They're like, no, you got that wrong. And it's like, oh, shoot, So it's actually, in doing this, I've been rewatching so many of the episodes so that I can reorient myself and talk about them. And then I will come across things and go, oh, wow, yeah, I was wrong about that. I just, 220 something episodes in 9 years, 40 to 50 years ago. I'm like, I'm lucky I remember my own name.
Yeah, really. Well, that's the big fear I have in doing these things is that I'm giving out erroneous information. So
don't worry, you will be corrected if you're wrong. And I'll do that's what I do. That's why you pipe in sometimes. I'll say, okay, this is what I think happened, but John, Ralph, Cammie, anyone, if you know something different. I'm trying to get it right, but it's just like it's funny. I have an episode about to come out where I was just talking about the more stuff about being on the Warner's lot.
Oh yeah,
and there were things that I thought I remembered and sets that I thought existed, and so I was like doing this research on it to verify that certain things I thought had been shot there were shot there, and I'm like, that doesn't show up at all as having been shot there. So I'm like, what am I thinking? Was it somebody else passing along information to me that was incorrect? But
yeah,
yeah. And then rumors get going, and all that. So
before I forget it, I'd like to tell you the last time I was with Ralph Waite. Mm-hmm. We had done actually all of us, pretty much all of us were there. It was a reading. Earl was doing a reading of his book. What's the name of that bookstore? Book Soup in West Hollywood. And Ralph was there. And when I pulled in when I arrived at Book Soup, he pulled in right next to me. And of course, we chatted and went inside and then had the reading was wonderful by Earl. And I believe I know I have someplace pictures of all of us together at Book Soup. And when we were leaving, we walked together. And from the front door down, the parking lot is down below on Book Soup. And just had a really, really nice visit. And had a really nice hug at the end. And I remember telling him I love you, and he said, I love you too. That was the last I saw Ralph.
And that's what I have for you today. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.